Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's After Effects scripting tutorial. In this one, I'm going to be teaching you how to make a login for your script so that you can limit it to have certain usernames or passwords and only allow certain access to those who have that information. Now, this isn't going to be connecting to an online server or anything. This is going to be local security with the information encoded and locked down inside of the script itself, but only you will have the knowledge of what the login and password are, and you can distribute that information to whoever you want. So the way this is going to work is we'll have a username and a password section, which we predefine. In this case, I'm just using my email and the password. If the user hits cancel, it's going to close the window, and if they run it and hit register with invalid information, we'll say invalid credentials. But once they put in the correct information and hit register, it's going to launch whatever script we want. And until they do that, they cannot access the script. So there's going to be a few things we're going to look at doing, and possibly a few bonus ideas which I've just thought up, including putting your script inside of another script using binary. And before we get started, I just want to remind you down below, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to be notified of when videos come out on the channel twice weekly on Monday and Thursday. Down in the description, you can check out the full code for this in the GitHub link, and there you can also follow us on Instagram to be notified of when videos are live. And of course, don't forget to follow our Discord server, where we have a general scripting and extensions and plugins section to discuss things with our now over 42 members. So let's go ahead and get started by creating a new script, and I'm just going to zoom in slightly to make it easier to see. The first thing we need to do is recreate this user interface, which is pretty easy. So we're going to start with just a window, and we're going to call this a new window. And the type of window it's going to be is a palette type, and we're just going to call it the login screen and undefined size. Then for the orientation of the window, we want all the groups inside to go from top to bottom. So we're going to have this username group, password group, and button group. So what I'll do is set the orientation equal to a column. Now all the groups we put in it will go from top to bottom. Then we'll create 3 groups, one for each of the ones I just mentioned. So we'll have the user group, the pass group, and the button group. Each one of these groups we're going to add to our window. So we'll say window.add, and we're going to add a group. And the size and position of the group is going to be undefined, and we can just call it whatever we want, but this text won't be displayed unless you make a panel. And for the orientation, we want each of the elements in the group to go from left to right, which is a row, because we want the username text, and then the username edit text, and then the password and the password edit text. So we're going to say usergroup.orientation is equal to a row. And what I'm going to do is just copy and paste this code down here to the other 2 groups and make sure I update the variable name. So now we have our 3 groups created. We just need to create the elements within it. So inside the user group, we need some text that says username and some edit text where they can put in their username. So I'll create a variable called user text, and we'll just say this is equal to our user group. And inside of our user group, we're going to add some static text, the undefined size, and we're just going to call it username. Then we want to go ahead and define the size of this, so we'll say userText.size, and we need to give it a width and a height for the size. And generally the default height for most elements is about 15 to 25, so let's just start with 25. And for the width, let's give it something like 60. And then we can go ahead and create our edit text box where we can put in our own text. So I'll say var user edits text is equal to our user group. Inside of the user group, we're going to add an edit text, and I need to spell it with 2 T's. Then it will have undefined size and position, and it's going to say by default login at username.com. And then the same thing, we're going to define the size of this so it can be the same as the password one. So I'm going to say user edit text.size, and let's make it maybe twice as long, so 120 by 25. And then now all I have to do is copy and paste this, and in the pass group, we just need to update to make sure it adds to the pass group or the password group. And we're going to change the user text to pass text. Update that and make this say password. And then for instead of user edit text, we can just make it pass edit text. And of course, make sure we update these as well as I'm going to make the password input empty. And then lastly, we need a register button and a cancel button. So what I'm going to do is inside the button group, I'm going to say register button is equal to our button group. We're going to add a button, undefined size, and we'll call it register. And then I can duplicate this by hitting Control or Command D, and I'm going to change register to cancel. That way we can close out of it if we don't want to proceed any further. So now lastly, let's grab our window and center it. and then we'll say window.show. And now when we go ahead and run the script, you can see it's looking pretty much exactly the same. The only difference is now we have this exit button. And since we have the cancel button, which is going to serve the same purpose, let's go ahead and remove the main script close button. In order to do that, what you need to do is create a fourth argument inside of your window and make it inside of brackets. Inside of here, you can define some additional parameters, such as setting a bool for the close button. If I set close button to false in this format, then we'll have no close button on here. So one thing I may want to do so we don't have to load up a ton of UIs is make sure I grab my cancel button, say onClick is equal to a function, and we just want to grab our window.close. So anytime we hit cancel, it's going to close our window. So if I run the script, you can see now our close button is gone because we told it to be false. And now if we hit cancel, our window is now going to close. So now all that's left to do is create some variables in order to track what our username and password are going to be and make sure the user is inputting those correctly and run a script based off of that. So one thing I'm actually going to try is I'm going to go ahead and load up a classic script that I've gone over before that's used to binary encode images, but I believe I can do this with other information as well, including a script file. And then I'm going to encode this in a binary format and run this as a file. So what I'm going to do is, referring to my original VFX toolkit script I used, we're going to grab the binary of that and see if we can get it. So if you're not familiar with this script, you can check out the little info button right here, and it will link to a video describing how to use it. And what I'm gonna do is give it the whole path here, videos, and then I'm gonna add the entire file name. And then I think we can just run this. And if I go to my location where I've saved it in a binary text file, then it looks like we've successfully encoded our script into a string. So what we can do is start at the beginning of the double brackets, and you can see there's going to be a lot of stuff we've got to scroll through to get to the bottom, but we want to get the end just where there's the double quotes that close it all out. And what we're going to do now is, inside of our script, we're going to say variable, maybe our script is equal to, and then we'll add a semicolon because we're about to paste a lot of text, and hit paste. Now you can turn on word wrap, but that's going to make it just a whole lot of text here, but it's a lot easier just to have word wrap off, and then you have all of this information here. So now we have our binary script encoded, which is perfect. Now we can basically have this inside of our password protected script, and they don't have to search for a file externally on the computer, which they could easily run essentially without this password. So basically, if they had an external location, if they had to refer to the videos folder in a script, they could just run the script without going through this password. So it's important that you encode the script itself inside of this password protected script, otherwise the user can easily just run it like any normal script. And also what I'm going to do now is create a variable for our username and one for our password. The password I'm just going to set to be password, and the username I'll just set to be my email. And we're going to be going through another level of encoding and protection later, just to make sure it's even harder to read all this. But what we want to do now that we have our script, our username, and our password, we want to go ahead and grab our register button, and we want to create an onClick. So whenever they click on the button, we're going to activate some bit of function. And the function that we're going to first need to do is check that the username and password are true, and they need to be both exactly true. So what we're going to do inside of our register button to onClick is check if our edit text here is equal to the username we explicitly told it, and we're also going to check that if our password is explicitly what we told it. So what I'm going to do is check if our user edit text, which is the whole edit text element. In order to get the string of text, we need to grab the dot text inside of it, and we're going to check if that's equal to our username variable. We're also going to make sure that we check if our password edit text dot text is equal to our password variable. So if it's equal to our username variable and our password variable, then what we're going to do is just go ahead and say alert hello, just to make sure we're getting them in there. And we're also going to then say $.eval file, and we can evaluate a file from our system. Typically you need to give it a specific file object, but what I'm going to try is actually just using our binary variable called our script, which contains our information. And then what we're going to also say is else if the username is not exactly the username we set and the password is not the exact password we set, we'll say please input valid credentials, and then we'll say return false to exit out of this bit of code. So now if I go ahead and run it and I put in invalid information, it's going to tell me please input valid credentials. So I'll go ahead and put in the information I know and hit register, and we'll say hello. And it looks like it's not running my script file exactly as I want. So what I need to do is quickly generate a temp file. The way to do this is just say var file is equal to a new file, and we're going to give this an arbitrary location. It could be on your documents in your desktop. Let's just say desktop slash testing.jsx. And what we're going to do then is say if our file does not exist, if we refer to this file object on our desktop and it's called testing.jsx, I don't have a file on my desktop called testing.jsx. So what we're going to say, if our file.exists, but we want to say the opposite. If it does not exist, so exclamation mark .exists. If it doesn't exist, we want to create it and fill it up with our binary script data here. So if our file does not exist, we need to make it exist. The way we do that is saying we're going to open up the file, and the way we're going to open it is to write. If you wanted to read data, you could just put R, but since we're going to be writing data to it, we're going to open it as a write. Then we'll say file.write, and we're going to write our script binary information. And then lastly, we need to say file.close to make sure it's not remaining open and leaking any data or information. So then after that, we can then run our file that we've created, and let's see if this works. So I run the script and I'll put in the right information. And once I hit register, we'll say hello, meaning we get into this main function here. And now hopefully it will create this temp file and run our script. One housekeeping thing is we should also close this window. So once we've ran this script, we can say window.close. And maybe one more other housekeeping thing is if we now look on our desktop, we're going to have this testing.jsx file. And what this is essentially this entire bit of script code here just pasted in a file, and we've renamed it as a JSX file. So what we should probably do as well, once we've created this temporary file and done everything we need with it, is remove it. So what we can do is just say file.remove, I believe, and you can see we have a file.remove function right there. And now lastly, I'm going to add an alert saying complete at the very end. So after we've created our temp file, checked the password and username, evaluated our temp file, closed the window, and removed our file, it's going to tell us we've completed it. So let's go ahead and run this. And again, if we hit cancel, it's going to close our script altogether. And if we go ahead and hit register with any invalid information, it's going to not let us in. And lastly, if we put in the right information and hit register, it's going to be complete and let us in. So now we should be missing that file on our desktop. We no longer have the temp file, so the user doesn't even know it happened because it happened so fast in the background. And there's actually one last step I would add to make this script, the last bit, protected, and that is we need to protect the username and password and the script code. In order to do that, we should probably first remove it from the center of the script. We need it to be a global variable, so it can't be inside of like a function, but we can go ahead and put it below a bunch of other text so it gets mixed in there. You can put it wherever you want, essentially. And then what we'll do is hit Control-Shift-E or Command-Shift-E on a Mac, and this will allow us to export our script as a binary. So I'll just go to my desktop here and type in pass protected. And normally this is going to save as a .jsx bin file, and this is fine. So we're going to hit save. And now if we go ahead and go to our desktop and load up all of our files, if we were to load our JSX bin file, it's going to load up with all of this crazy text. So you don't even know what this is going to be doing if you were just to look at this code. You don't know that this is password protected. You don't know what the script code inside of it is. It's totally protected under multiple layers of encoding now. The last thing you could do to make things a little bit easier on the user is you can take your JSX bin file and rename it to JSX, and it's going to run the exact same way. I can open up this JSX and it's going to appear all encoded and hard to read, but when I run it, it's going to be exactly the same, where I need to put in my valid credentials. And once I finally do, I'll get access to the script. So that's going to do it for this week's After Effects scripting tutorial, guys. I hope you enjoyed. That is how to password protect or log into your script inside of an After Effects script, and make sure that it's all encoded and hard to read so that people can't just hack in or use your product. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, hit subscribe down below and the bell icon next to it to be notified of videos coming out twice weekly on the channel. And down in the description, you can check out the code to borrow this script login information for yourself for your own scripts. And also in the description, you can follow us on Instagram for cool updates and just talk if you want. And another reminder to join the Discord server, where we have over 40 members actively participating, discussing, and learning about Premiere and After Effects scripting, extensions, and plugins. And lastly, you can donate in crypto, whether it be Bitcoin, Ethereum, or Basic Attention Token. In the description, all the addresses are there. But that's going to do it for this week's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed. We'll see you in the next one.